Something just snapped on the Donbas front lines. Putin can feel it, even if he won't admit it. Every deadline he sets for the fall of the Donbas comes and goes. The same will happen to the latest deadline, which calls for the Donbas to be in Russian hands by the end of 2026. That won't happen. Putin knows it. Now he's just delaying the inevitable, hiding from reality. What Russia's leader doesn't want to admit, and absolutely doesn't want the rest of the world to see, is that the Donbas offensive has already fallen apart. 2 battalions are being wiped out per day. Russia's army isn't resurgent, it lies in ruin. On its last legs, all that military can do now is launch assaults until it all becomes too much and the inevitable happens. Russia fails. It wasn't supposed to be like this. When Russia kicked off 2026, Putin thought that he held all of the cards. Peace negotiations at the time still centered around the Russian demand that Ukraine cede the Donbas. Russia was also building on a campaign against Ukraine's energy infrastructure that was already doing tremendous damage and by the end of January had destroyed 8.5 gigawatts of Ukraine's electricity generation, amounting to almost half of the entire country's capacity. In Putin's mind, the stage had been adequately set. 2026 would be the year that the Donbas finally fell. Russia planned a grand spring and summer offensive to make sure that would happen. Its targets were the 4 cities that make up the Donetsk Fortress Belt: Kostiantynivka, Druzhkivka, Kramatorsk, and Sloviansk. One by one, those cities would fall. Ukraine's soldiers would be victims of their own exhaustion combined with a crippled rear that prevented resupply and rotation. First, Kostiantynivka would collapse, then the rest. Fast forward to the end of July 2026, and reality is far different from what Putin imagined. Those 4 Fortress Belt cities still stand. Sure, Russia has claimed it occupies Kostiantynivka. Putin himself made the declaration, only to be instantly refuted by Ukraine's generals. In reality, all that Russia managed to do is infiltrate some soldiers into the city, creating grey zones where nobody holds full control. That isn't an occupation, it's a failure dressed up as a success. As the Institute for the Study of War, or ISW's Russian team lead, Katerina Stepanenko, puts it, "These are infiltrations, these are not advances. These are groups of maybe 1 or 2 guys, Russian servicemen entering some positions in the city. It's not a consolidated position. They still need quite a lot of time and quite a lot of resources to actually exploit that into consolidated positions." The grand Donbas occupation that Putin claimed was inevitable in 2026 hasn't happened. Instead, Russia is stuck in a trap. Its forces grind away to make pitiful advances, losing thousands upon thousands of soldiers in the process. Entire battalions and more are being swallowed up every single day, and the cities that have yet to fall each present the same challenge: devastating urban battles, drone-infested defenses, a demand for Russian manpower so massive that Russia's depleted army may not survive the fight that Putin has forced it into. This is Putin's Donbas disaster. Russia's front line is collapsing, and we can see that from the casualties. Putin should have seen all of this coming. He didn't, and that wasn't just due to arrogance, as you'll soon discover. But he should have. Russia's ill-fated campaign to take Pokrovsk told Putin everything that he needed to know about why his plans for the Fortress Belt would fall flat on their face. Russia holds most of Pokrovsk now, though fighting in the region still rages. It took years for Russia to take that city, which, though important, is much smaller than the 4 Fortress Belt settlements that now stand in Russia's way. Precise casualty figures are hard to come by, though military analyst and former US Navy SEAL Chuck Farrar estimates the number of Russian troops lost to that city to be somewhere in the region of 250,000. That was Putin's big clue. He didn't pay attention. Now Russia's Donetsk problem is clear. The 4 Fortress Belt cities that sit in front of Russia's forces are larger, more dangerous, and even better fortified than Pokrovsk ever was. The same goes for the land between Pokrovsk and the Fortress Belt. Russia's failure to quickly capture Pokrovsk gave Ukraine time to build fortifications behind the city, which Russia's forces still have to navigate just to stand a chance of reaching the Fortress Belt front. Farrar estimates 200,000 casualties for each of the 4 Fortress Belt cities. That's a very conservative estimate. It's far more likely that Putin will burn through another 1 million of Russia's soldiers before he's able to claim Donetsk and, by extension, the Donbas. Russia can't avoid these losses because it isn't able to attack the Fortress Belt from all sides. Each city has to be tackled individually, with Kostiantynivka being the first. What we saw behind Pokrovsk is happening in the other 3 cities. As long as Kostiantynivka holds, costing Russia tens of thousands of soldiers in the process, Ukraine is preparing the next city, and the next. A meat grinder of massive proportions has been created in the Donbas, and Putin is simply feeding soldiers into it, as though they are cattle ready for the slaughter. Right now, Russia is losing 2 battalions per day to its Donetsk push. At least. The UK's National Army Museum says that a battalion typically numbers 500 to 1,000 troops. We only need to look at any daily Russian casualty figure to see Putin's big Donbas problem right now. Let's take the 24 hours leading up to July 30th. Russia lost 1,360 soldiers in a single day, which amounts to anywhere between 1.5 and almost 3 battalions, depending on the numbers. Let's cast a wider net. June was a terrible month for Russia, a record breaker in 2026 when it comes to losses, as Ukraine inflicted 39,490 casualties on Russia during the course of the month. Divide that figure by 30 and you get 1,316 casualties per day on average. Losing around 2 battalions per day in the Donbas isn't a one-off for Russia. It's the norm. Standard operating procedure for a Donbas campaign that is stumbling from one disaster to the next. The spring offensive in Donetsk flopped. By the end of a season that was supposed to have delivered at least part of the Fortress Belt, Russia's forces had barely made any progress, and they were actively retreating elsewhere in Ukraine, such as in Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhia, where Ukraine's counterattacks liberated hundreds of square kilometers of territory. As Ivan Timochko, who is the head of the Council of Reservists of Ukraine's ground forces, puts it, they were saying that Putin was going all in, that the Donetsk region had to be surrendered because the Russians would break through the defense and be near Kyiv. And what do we have now? A failed spring campaign. We're about 2 months into the summer campaign as we speak, and we know that the end of August is going to see us delivering the same message. Like his spring campaign, Putin's summer campaign in the Donbas will also fail. After all, what these combined campaigns, along with the first 2 months of 2026, have delivered so far to Russia hasn't been much. The ISW revealed that in its July 22nd assessment of Russia's offensive campaign. By that point in the year, the ISW assessed that Russian forces had only seized a net total of 81.1 square kilometers of Ukraine in 2026. We're not misspeaking here, 81.1 square kilometers. A Ukrainian counteroffensive that reclaimed 626.85 square kilometers has brought that number down substantially. But even taking that out of the equation, Russia would have only gained about 700 square kilometers from an offensive that was supposed to deliver the Donbas. That is pathetic. And it shows us, as clear as day, that Putin's military is on its last legs. As for why this is happening, we can look back to previous Russian campaigns in Donetsk and compare them to what we see today. Russia enjoyed plenty of success in the region during the first few years of the war, with the highlight for Putin's forces being the taking of Bakhmut. Sure, that battle was bloody, costing Putin thousands of soldiers, but Russia was able to bring the full might of its mechanized units to the fight, and Ukraine hadn't yet developed the drone-based kill zone strategy we see today. Now, as Russia is trying to push into cities that are far larger than Bakhmut, things are very different. It's not just the FPV drones killing thousands of soldiers, often before they get to the front lines. Ukraine's campaign against Russian logistics in the near rear, aided by a new generation of mid-range strike drones, has done a real number on Russia's push for Donetsk. When Putin's forces attacked Bakhmut, and even for most of the campaign against Pokrovsk, soldiers weren't dealing with a fuel crisis. They had armor, and they were able to use it, along with vehicles that could transport troops and supplies across the front. Now, Russia has to deal with its top 10 refineries all being damaged, with Farrar claiming that these refineries have seen their combined fuel output reduced by 65%. That sort of thing has a massive impact on the battlefield. Soldiers that once drove into assaults now have to march, making them easy targets for drones. Russia can't launch wide-scale mechanized assaults anymore, leading it to rely on infiltrators creating grey zones, which in turn makes advances far slower than they once were. And when you have 2 battalions going down every day to compound all of that, you get what we now see in Donetsk and the wider Donbas region, the complete collapse of Russia's offensive. What we're seeing here is a Russian military that is on its last legs in the Donbas. But the worst thing for Russia is that Putin doesn't even know what's happening. It may seem strange that Russia's leader makes outlandish claims, such as saying Kostiantynivka has been captured, when those claims can be easily disproven in a heartbeat. But there's a reason why Putin makes those claims, and it's not all about trying to project false power. You'll find out what that reason is soon, but first, this is a reminder that you're watching The Military Show. This is the kind of insight that you want to see. Make sure that you are subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any of our daily videos. So Putin must be panicking about the Donbas, right? He can see that none of his deadlines are being met, so that must mean something is going wrong. And maybe Putin is aware enough to know that these things aren't great for Russia right now. However, there is a very good chance that he has no real idea about just how badly his Donbas offensive has failed. Why? As Putin demands progress, his generals collude to hide the reality from their leader. After all, it's their necks that are on the line if they have to be the ones who sidle up to Putin and say, well, sir, actually, Kostiantynivka hasn't fallen. We're not even close to taking it, and we've barely put a dent into the fortress belt. They say don't shoot the messenger, but nothing about not letting that messenger have an unfortunate accident through an open window. What Putin has done to consolidate as much power as he can is surround himself with sycophants and liars. His top generals don't view winning the war as their jobs. They exist to please Putin. And making Putin happy when he asks about Donetsk involves lying to him. We're not the only ones who say so. In a June report, the Financial Times spoke to a pair of former senior Kremlin officials. Both confirmed that Putin is increasingly deluded about both Russia's progress in Ukraine and Russia's technological achievements because his higher-ups lie to him. Valery Gerasimov, who is the chief of the Russian army's general staff, is the architect of the illusion that surrounds Putin. Russia's leader trusts this man so much that he requests 3 briefings from Gerasimov per day. As one of the former Kremlin officials noted, Putin's very much under the influence of the military, who are really good at stringing him along. He understands that, but he really believes them and lets them do it. It's this delusion that results in Putin making such outlandish claims like those related to Kostiantynivka, or his declaration that Russian soldiers don't need to worry about losing access to Starlink, because Russia has an equivalent that is perhaps even superior in some ways. That equivalent appears to be the Rasvet satellite internet project. That project launched its first 16 satellites in March 2026, and it's not even operational yet. Starlink has more than 10,200 satellites. In what world does Rasvet compare to Starlink? Putin's and Putin's alone, likely because he's been told by his toadies that Rasvet is going to be as good as Starlink, and that is Putin's big problem. For all of his grand declarations about the Donbas, he has no idea what's really happening to Russia on the front. That's why Putin constantly overestimates Russia's potential and its chances of winning in Ukraine. Though he claims to monitor information from multiple sources, including Russia's military blogging community, Putin only really listens to those closest to him. Perhaps not people he trusts, but people he can control and who will tell him what he wants to hear, like Gerasimov. And as he delves deeper into his delusion, the Russian military falls apart, not just on the front. Putin's war machine is crumbling from the inside due to a long-range rampage by Ukraine's drone operators. We touched on Russia's oil refineries and the fuel problems felt on the Donetsk front. The issue goes far beyond this single sector of the battlefield. There are fuel shortages across the entire front and inside Russia itself, because Ukraine has been crippling Russian energy infrastructure. Refineries are being hit from the border regions to as deep in Russia as Omsk, which is in Siberia. Ukraine's drones had to travel over 2,500 kilometers for that particular strike, which shows us that Ukraine is now at a point where it can hit almost any strategically viable target in Russia that it chooses. Ukraine also regularly hits oil depots, preventing the transportation of fuel, and it's been isolating Crimea with strikes against fuel trucks in the occupied territories and attacks on shadow fleet ships in the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea. On July 9th, Pravda reported that Ukraine has knocked out as much as 40% of Russia's total refining capacity, when accounting for refineries both within and outside of the top 10 that Farah mentioned. Ukraine has also started to strike logistical networks inside Russia itself, as we've seen from its attacks on Wildberries. Over 15% of that company's warehouses have been destroyed as of July 30th, UNN reports, which is Ukraine's way of bringing pain to the Russian people and delivering payback to a company that sells military equipment and drones to Putin's soldiers. Anger is everywhere in Russia. People are fighting in the streets because they can't buy fuel, so you can only imagine the tension that is on the front. And the photos from Ukraine's logistics lockdown campaign, which has seen it rain mid-range strike drones down on Russia's convoys, show us why Russia's forces on the front are now so poorly equipped. It's hard to go into battle with fuel, food and equipment when all are being shattered kilometers away from where they need to go. All of these problems are converging on Russia all at once. Whatever initiative that Putin thought he had in the Donbas at the beginning of 2026 has evaporated. Costs are ballooning, both in terms of the billions of dollars being spent and the blood being spilled in Donetsk. Russia's losses are now so substantial that the 27,000 or so volunteers that it recruits each month can't cover them. Ukraine has also grown more efficient. It's building drones by the million, as 500,000 FPV strike drones are being manufactured every single month. The sheer proliferation of these drones is a large part of the reason why Russia now suffers 8 casualties for every 1 Ukrainian injury or death, per the Center for Strategic and International Studies. One thing above all else is abundantly clear: Putin has to change something. But he won't. Even with the distorted reality that he's created around himself, Russia's leader knows that there is something amiss in the Donbas. All he can hope for now is that the West will stop supporting Ukraine, or that Ukraine will fundamentally change what it is doing to neutralize so many Russian offensives. Neither seems a likely prospect. And rather than working together with his commanders to create change, Putin refuses to do anything to alter the corrupt system he has built, because that system has always served him in the past. Still, the failure of Russia's military can't be ignored. As little as he seems to know, Putin at least knows enough to realize that a campaign he claimed would be over in days, but has now spanned almost half a decade, puts him in danger. Paranoia has replaced policy. Russia's leader now spends most of his time hiding in bunkers, away from anybody who might be looking to depose him for Russia's failures in Donetsk and elsewhere. The personal security around Putin has been ramped up in 2026 as Putin hands more power over to Russia's FSB. Those who work with Putin, such as his chefs and bodyguards, may no longer travel on public transport and can only use phones that have no internet access. Anybody who visits Putin now goes through 2 rounds of screening just to ensure they are safe, CNN reports. All that Putin is doing here is cocooning himself away from the catastrophe that he has created. None of this will change what's happening in the Donbas. If anything, the situation there will only get worse. Anybody who might have the guts to deliver the truth to Putin isn't going to get through the layers of security. They'll be stopped as soon as Putin's goons recognize that they're going to say something that might upset a man who is so obsessed with control that he refuses to see reality. As for Donetsk, the region isn't going to fall under Putin's sway by the end of 2026, or by the end of 2027 or 28. At Russia's current rate of advance, Putin's forces will need around 14 years to finally capture Donetsk, Al Jazeera reports. And if that isn't the sign of the complete collapse of an offensive that was originally supposed to deliver the Donbas to Putin by the end of August, we don't know what is. Russia will be lucky to make any sort of real progress in Kostiantynivka by the end of the year, never mind taking the Donbas. After all, that claim of capture didn't go so well for Putin. Right after he made it, Ukraine's Scalia regiment proved how wrong he was. The few Russians who managed to make it into the city were caught in a trap of Scalia's design, and you can find out how by watching our video. And if you like this video, we have plenty more in store for you at the Military Show. Subscribe today and ring the notification bell to make sure you're among the first to see our latest videos. And thank you, as always, for watching.